the meeting to order.
All right, let's call this meeting of the Ohio City Design Review Committee to order. And
I'll call the roll.
call the roll, Nate.
Doug Wall,
Here.
Margaret Ladd,
Here.
Marika Clark,
Here.
and Chris Lozier.
Here.
Okay. And Alex sent me a message. He'll be here in a little bit. And I believe Antonio will be joining us as well. So we'll go ahead and get started. The first project is Pioneer, the restaurant signage at West 25th and Lorain, and Dan Whalen is representing. Dan, go ahead.
Thanks, everybody. Good to see you again. I just want to bring through our signage package for one of our 3 restaurants that has actually already opened here. So very important to get some signage on the exterior of the building. We've anecdotally soft opened last week, and our grand opening was this past Tuesday. And the number one thing that people are asking is, how do we get there? Where's the front door? So obviously signage is important. That said, it's been a great week for us. We're really excited. Hopefully you guys get a chance to stop in if you haven't already. You can make reservations at our website, but you can also walk in. That said, I want to get through the sign package relatively quickly. Essentially what we have here in the first page is a pole-mounted Lollipop sign. I know that that's not necessarily typical in the neighborhood. There are a few examples. Mason's Creamery, for example, has one. This is kind of our front and center sign that sits next to the Airstream trailer that was previously approved as part of our landscape and hardscape package on the patio. The notion of Pioneer, the whole restaurant is a wood-fired grill, sports bar sort of vibe. So it's very lowbrow in a camp setting. So that's where the Airstream comes in. That's kind of where this sign fits next to it. You'll see the landscaping if any of you guys frequent this stretch along the front of our building. The greenery has blossomed and has grown in. It's very lush. We're pretty happy with it. There's a few trees that need replaced because they didn't end up blossoming. So that's on the agenda as well for our landscape contractor. These are just some viewpoints of where the sign sits. Our main entrance sign above the doors here is a interior illuminated channel letter with the face removed. So essentially it's just an open face LED painted yellow, pin mounted to the parapet underneath the brick there above the door. This sits interior to the park. So as you scroll one page further, it comes alongside a non-illuminated blade sign that's just 2 foot by 2 foot next to the front door. This identifies where people need to come in. Our entrance is not actually on the main street, either Lorain Avenue or Gehring. It's tucked into the interior of our park space. So this sign is really only visible to guide people to the actual door they need to walk in to post. And keep scrolling. So this, I just want to one page up. Sorry, a little too far. So this is the view kind of standing in front of our coffee shop at the main corner of 25th and Lorain, looking all the way through to the park and the front door and the location of that sign that we were just discussing. So as I mentioned, it is not necessarily front and center on the street. It is isolated and insular to the park. And then a similar sign, same exact size, same scale, same type, mounted on the Lorain facade. This is pin mounted, so this will not have any raceways visible or anything but the letters themselves through the face of the building. And so I think in total, we had asked the question, we were asked the question, how many lineal feet of storefront we have. For Pioneer, because it's 3-sided, it's got over 340 lineal feet of storefront. And we're really only asking for about 50 gross square feet of sign area in total, excuse me. So that's the signage for the outside of the restaurant. This would be the location of that as you're looking east towards the RTA station. And that pretty much wraps up our exterior sign presentation for the restaurant.
All right, well, I think that all looks reasonable and good. My only comment is the little blade sign by the entrance. Trying to read the dimension, it looks like 7'6" or 7'8" above the ground.
Yeah, I think that's probably yeah, you were on the right page, Nate, if you're driving right here, just slightly above here.
Up.
The elevation right there. Yeah, I think it ends up actually being a little higher, so that's probably mislabeled. We have the elevation of our sort of face mounted up and down lights that surround the entire perimeter of the building. This will sit at the same elevation. I think it's mismarked at 7.6, as those are probably closer to 10 to 12 feet off of the ground.
Yes, well, I think it should.
You cut out there. I didn't catch that.
I think it should be at least 8 feet to the bottom of the sign.
Yeah, definitely will. That's a misnumbered elevation.
Well, I think it looks well proportioned and does what it's supposed to do.
Great.
Yep, yeah, I'll second that. I agree. I think the signage package seems appropriate. And I would agree that the bottom of the sign should be in, as mentioned, mislabeled. So make sure that that's at a higher elevation than 7.6. But I think it looks nice.
I was curious about some other examples of that lollipop sign. I thought that felt rather large.
Yeah, if you want to go back up to the page where that is shown, Nate. With the words that we're trying to get on the sign, and in terms of the diameter of it, if we went smaller, you wouldn't be able to really read any of the stuff that's on there other than the main word mark. And in relation to the trees, this diameter allows it to at least be somewhat visible from the east direction prior to you being like right up on it. So the other notion was to kind of hide the pole and shroud it in the tree, so it's really not even visible. The sign's just kind of floating above the airstream. But you know, if we tested it out to see if we could get it even smaller than 7-foot diameter, and it was not becoming legible without us changing the entire design.
I think if you go back to one of the rendering views, it shows that I thought 7 feet seemed kind of large, but in proportion to the, you know, airstream trailer and the building and everything else, the overall scale of the project, I think in this case it works.
And
Yeah,
just, I find that I'm a little concerned about the precedent it might set, you know, for other places in the neighborhood, because if you imagine these, you know, people wanting to add more of these things this size, that's my only hesitation. If I don't, you know, I don't know how anybody else feels.
I'm glad you brought up precedent, because I like when that comes up in these discussions, because a lot of times I think precedent always needs to be reviewed in context to what's going on around it, which I know is the goal of this this discussion anyway. But when you talk about the 28-foot airstream, the 115-foot building, and just the amount of greenery and trees that we have that are actually topping out right now at 20 to 25 feet around this, it'll actually end up feeling quite small. So I think as others potentially come forward and try to enlarge their signs, if we went smaller too, outside of being illegible, it would essentially, I think, feel a little awkward with the context of the way that the large building and everything wraps around this area. So, you know, I just, whenever the word precedent's brought up, that's the way.
I know, yeah, like the Mason Creamery sign, that's integral to its architectural, you know, to its time period and to when it was constructed. So I just think as long as we all keep in mind that this is maybe correct for this site, it's not something that I would probably want to see repeated all over the place.
Yes, I agree completely, but I think the scale of this development is kind of unprecedented and all.
Yeah.
So I think we can reference that when somebody says, well, you let them do it. So, well, that was an unusual circumstance.
How far off the right of way is that sign?
The right of way is about where this first cut in the concrete running along the path or running along the sidewalk is. So I know you can't see my cursor, but that concrete wall that is now clad in wood, if you come left, that first no, on the sidewalk running down Lorain. Right there. Oh, right where you were, just where hovering. I'm talking the larger, the upper picture. Yeah, the first right there, yep, exactly. That's about where the concrete or the property line is. So that would make it about 6 feet shy of that.
This is zoned as limited retail, and the preliminary review from our zoning expert here showed that this meets the zoning and no variances would be needed. And then also for precedence, we also have to remember that all projects are taken on a case-by-case basis. So precedence really can be looked at, but it doesn't necessarily need to be adhered to.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any comments or questions, or would somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept as presented with the comment that the blade sign attached to the building should be a minimum of 8 foot to the bottom of the sign.
I'll second.
Great, fantastic. I will call the roll. Doug Wall,
Yes.
Margaret Lamb,
Yes.
Marika Clark,
Yes.
Chris Lozier,
Yes.
and that's everybody we have right now. So it is approved. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Dan.
Our next item is the Culture Fix CLE, healing our community through the arts presentation. And I believe, who's here to present this one? Sorry.
It's me. It's not Matt Garson, it's DeDe Yasnow, and I'm with the Jewish Federation. Thank you very much for having us. Culture Fix CLE, healing our community through the arts, is the Cleveland Israel Arts Connection of the Jewish Federation's contribution to the Front Triennial, or however many it is with the pandemic. So if you move down, so our idea is to, this was actually the concept of the artist DeDe, to provide the visual narration and kind of the healing that's needed coming out of the pandemic to both the arts and the communities. And to build our bridges, our goal is to bring Israeli art into the Cleveland community, and Tikkun Olam, which is a fundamental principle in Judaism of repairing the world. We can move down. Yes.
I think it might be.
I don't think that was
sorry.
for you, sorry.
Okay. So DeDe actually initiated this project in Tel Aviv in 2020 in response to the pandemic, where he used local creators there. And again, it's the physical manifestation. He's known for his signature Band-Aids, and in fact, his last name is now Band-Aid, which is an imagery he created or adopted after his service in the IDF and his response to PTSD. We can go down. So this is DeDe. He also, you don't see his face ever on screen or photographs, and it tells you a little bit about him. He's had installations all over the world. And in fact, during his stay here, he just left a couple of days ago. He and his partner, Nitzan, did a mural on Coventry in Cleveland Heights. All right, go down. So this was our concept, is to bring him, because it fits so well with the visual art concept of a front, and we wanted to bring it and focus on Cleveland creators. And go down. So these are the subjects that were selected. We actually went to different art institutions and experts and asked them for their recommendations of who would be great subjects. And we tried to pay a lot of attention to diversity, which again, the diversity is artistic discipline, gender, body size, physical ability, race, ethnicity, and faith. So we have a pretty good representation of what the arts community in Cleveland looks like. Okay, next slide. So I wanted to give you a little taste of what went into this. The photographs of taking the photographs were on the next page, but we partnered with CIA Digital Output Center to create these life-size images. And here they are coming out of the printer, and we have volunteers cutting them out very meticulously. Next slide. And here's examples of one. The pictures you asking how they're affixed. We actually used white glue that was diluted by water. And you can see he uses brushes to put them on exterior buildings to put the paste, then the image. And this is a finished one of Mary Verdi Fletcher and Selena Speck from Dancing Wheels. The image, the wet that you see around them is because it hasn't fully dried yet when I took this photo. So it does dry clear. Go to the next one. Here's one of Kasumi. The picture on the left is actually the photo session where DeDe places the photos and someone photographs from above. And here he is preparing the wall by Cedarly Theater. And there's the finished Kasumi. Again, it's not fully dry. Go to the next one. Here's another one of the photo session and the photographer Dan Levin and Renee Schiffer, who's a cellist with Apollo's Fire. We'd like the posters to stay up through front, which closes on October 2nd. Next slide. And here's some front interns helping put up Ami Vardi, who's a professor of clarinet at Kent State University. And so the posters can come down with water and a little scraping. So here are some of the images that we've already put up. Amber Ford is a photographer, DJ Doc is a hip hop artist, and David Shimatekahara from Groundworks. Go to the next one. These are the target neighborhoods that we have all over Cleveland. When DeDe installed this in Tel Aviv, he did it under cover of darkness and went to the gray areas and just would go out and put them up randomly. We, however, are going through the process of getting approvals for these because we know Cleveland, and we wanted them to be in small clusters so that you didn't just see a one-off image, but you saw a few of them. And we'll have signage that goes with each one, not signage, it's just an 8.5-inch piece of paper, which I have one right here. Sorry about that. Which I don't know if you can see it, which just explains what it is and a website that you can go to learn more about DeDe and the artist. So these are the neighborhoods we're looking at. Next slide. These are the specific ones that Matt Garson worked with. Here's 3308 Lorain Avenue. We would do it on the nice brick wall. Next slide is the Van Roy building. Fred Bidwell, we talked to him and he offered this building up. We would do it on this side there. We don't know the exact location because it depends on what else is on the wall or if there's bricks that stick out sometimes decoratively like 1/2 inch or something. So we need to make sure it's as flat and smooth as possible. So it might fluctuate up or down a bit there. Next one. Again, this church building and the intro building, which is the following slide, I'm a little bit at a loss because these were the photos I was given, and we would really need to go and see what the surface is like and talk with building managers when we're on site to get their input to say, yeah, this is a good spot. No, please don't put it here. So there's been some preliminary conversations, but we would want to really get direct input when we're there with the posters. They're each about their life size. So they're about 6 to 7 feet because sometimes people have props or they're holding their arms in unique ways. Next slide. And here's the intro building. We would need to see what would be acceptable there because I can't see from the photos I was supplied exactly where the best spot would be. But again, it would be with the full knowledge and approval of building management. And the next one is just a big thank you. So how can I answer any questions?
Well, I guess I would, my only concern here really is, I think, is two things. Is one, who's actually going to be responsible to remove these things after the cycle is finished in October? Is that arranged? Are there people, lined up and committed to doing that? And secondly, since you don't have the exact locations of most of these, I guess I would, even though they're temporary installations, I would like to see you come back and, show us where exactly you worked out with the building managers to locate these. Because particularly the church and stake, it's like, well, that's a pretty large complex.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, we don't know where. Somewhere on there is kind of vague.
Well, as far as removal goes, you know, we'd like them up through October 2nd, but they can stay longer if the building management wants that. And I do have a bunch of volunteers that have helped us with installation and throughout the process, in addition to DeDe and its son, and we could speak with them about doing it. And I'd also talk to the building management to see if it's part of their normal upkeep. You know, they're getting ready for the winterizing, if they would be willing to do that as well. But we could help. And then
Well,
the
I just want to see, you know, I mean, it was nice that you described how they would be removed, but to know that they, since it is designed to be a temporary installation, it's
Mhm.
nice that there's an actual plan in place to, you know, restore the surface when the installation is done.
right.
I believe we have Tara Petrus, the city's public art coordinator here. Tara?
Thank you, Nate. I would just say, first of all, I love this project. I think it's unique and fun. I appreciate that the subjects are of different genders, age range, ability, different abilities. So I think the inclusivity, race, there's so much inclusivity with this project. But as far as the removal, I just wanted to reference a project that we did a few years ago in Ohio City with wheat pasting on the center next to the high-rise public housing. And those were a similar treatment as this would be, and the weather kind of brought them down naturally. So as far as removal, I don't think that would be a big issue. And if it's on brick, it shouldn't damage the building. With the church and state, I'm not sure. I guess it depends on where it goes. I don't think that wood section of the building would be ideal. But again, like this is very similar to that other project. So hopefully it would last the full time up front, but it may not. But I wouldn't be concerned about the removal of them too much.
Yeah, the weather here is much different than Tel Aviv, which they've lasted a lot longer. So we, you know, Northeast Ohio winters.
I guess I sort of like that. I think you're right with the water-based paste, you know, and getting hit with the weather, they'll start to come off by themselves, but I don't want to start looking unsightly with kind of peeling off because nobody was responsible for getting rid of them. And I'm sure most of the building owners would don't want to see it left as some unsightly peeling element.
Nate, is that something OCI could have a maintenance agreement to remove any as they deteriorate with the artists?
I'm not sure. I don't know. Maybe one on our building, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
Or maybe you could require the building owners, you have to get some permission to put them on there. Maybe they can agree to have something in your contract with them where they agree to remove this after a certain time period, or when they start feeling if they want to leave them up after, you know. So I think.
Sorry, can I interject? I think having the art, like all of the business owners do an agreement might be out of the ordinary and might delay the project, just plain devil's advocate here. But I would say that the buildings that I know that these are proposed to go on, in at least Ohio City that I've spoken with, these people all are in the special improvement district, which has graffiti removal and et cetera included in their, you know, their agreement and their services with the special improvement district. And as well, they're all they all keep up with their buildings pretty well. So I don't think that, you know, negligence would be an issue here, hopefully.
All right. Well, yes, I would agree that the places you're proposing them, I don't think the owners wanted to look at. So that's not a huge concern. I just, you know, it occurred to me.
And what if we just had a date that we ask that they be removed by, pick an arbitrary date, the end of November?
Right. Okay. That's good. That's a good way to approach it.
And I'd like to say too, real quick, I wouldn't want to hold this project up with front starting in a little around a month from now. If we could go ahead and let the project proceed without the exact locations on the building. I trust the artist's judgment. as well as working with the Jewish Federation, I would hope that this could move forward. Again, it's a temporary project, and I don't think that the location on the building would make or break the project, I guess.
I would generally be willing to, trust the artist working with the Jewish Federation and the building owners to find something appropriate. I'm just reluctant to leave too much to complete chance. I don't know how other committee members feel about that. I mean, I support this. I think these are very creative, poster projects, and I want to see it happen. But any other committee members have any comment on that, or am I being too picky?
I mean, I agree with you, Doug. It would be helpful to know where exactly they are. I don't know. I mean, I'll ask the applicant, when do you anticipate making that determination of exactly where they'll go?
I have to present before some other places too. So I'm hoping to do a whole second batch of installation the beginning of July. But I could always go and meet more immediately with the business owners and get the exact locations ironed out. So I could do that at any time. That, if you want it sooner rather than later, we can do that. Because usually we just show up and go, hey, what, does this look good here, etc. And we try to match the subject of the poster to the area if we can.
Well, we meet every 2 weeks, and so, I mean, it's pretty easy to get back on our agenda to just, show those things. And this is another thing, as was mentioned earlier about precedent. Say, well, somebody else comes back and says, I just want to put it somewhere on there, but I'm not ready to tell you where.
Nate, does this need to go down to landmarks?
I was going to say, so this would not have to go to landmarks traditionally because it's temporary art. What you guys could recommend is to approve with the conditions that they come to landmark staff with the final locations.
That would be fair enough. They have landmark staff review it. We've done many things in that way that they're there for. So yes, I think that would suit me if somebody wants to make a motion and include that the landmark staff has to have a sign off on the exact location.
But before I make a motion, let me ask Carl, is that agreeable to you since this involves you?
Yes, Don and I would be agreeable to that.
Okay. Then I'll make a motion to approve, subject to prior to installation, the exact locations on the identified buildings be run past and approved by landmark staff, and that the temporary installations come down no later than the end of November. Let's just say December 1st, 2022.
Would anyone like to second that motion?
I'll second that.
Great, thank you. I'll call the roll. Doug Wall,
Yes.
Alex Frondorf,
Yes.
Chris Lozier,
Yes.
Margaret Land,
Yes.
and Tony Marinucci, who has joined us now. Antonia?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. My dad just walked up to me unexpectedly. What did you ask?
We're taking a vote on approving.
Oh, I didn't see the presentation, so I don't think I'm gonna be
Abstain?
able to vote. Yes, please.
Okay, fair enough. Then the motion is approved with the caveat that they will finalize the locations to landmark staff and that the temporary art comes down no later than December 1st. Thank you.
Yeah, I've been in CPR training.
Thank you very, very much. I'll be in touch with you, Tara and Nate, to go over the details. Thank you.
Heavy.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
All right, keeping things moving here. Next is some more temporary art at the Mahon Green.
No, I meant you.
Can you please mute yourself if you are not presenting?
Yes, that was going to be my recommendation as well, that everybody who's not speaking, please mute. And I believe Bob Peck and David Biro are here to present this.
Yes, hello guys. hopefully you guys can see me. Thank you for having us here today. Cleveland Design is an art collective based here in Cleveland, Ohio that seeks the proliferation of large-scale art across the city. Right now we're identifying city parks or public spaces in which to put temporary 30-day large-scale art installations. For our latest project, I teamed up and collaborated with Bob Peck, who is a respected and amazing fine art and graffiti artist across Cleveland for large-scale art installation that we were typically shooting for NBA All-Star Weekend. We actually missed out on that. It's no problem, and so we got the project together and we completed it, and we're looking to place it now publicly within the city. Bob is here with us today. This is a monumental project because this is first time possibly, or the first time in a long time that graffiti art has been made into a large scale art installation. So it's really, really going to inspire and motivate a lot of people that do 2D or fine gallery art to be able to visualize or formulate how their work can come out and be potentially large scale art as well too. We chose all sorts of locations around town. I talked with Tara extensively. We got preliminary approval for Jim Mahon Green, which is really beautiful. It sits on a very visual, highly visible corridor here in Cleveland, and we picked a location down closer to the BOP stop because that's technically where the ground is flattest. Most of the topology along Jim Mahon Green slopes, so it's tough to put a art installation where the ground slopes. So we did pick, there we go. We did pick a beautiful spot. There is a color scheme to this. Bob can talk about it more. So the art installation it's built out of 12 millimeter sand plywood, which is a marine grade plywood. And the internal frame is built out of 4x4 pressure treated wooden posts. We use all GRK engineered fasteners or screws. They're rated to 900 pounds of force a piece, and then we have 1/2-inch bolts across the insulation for additional support as well too. We would mount this into the ground we would impact it into the ground just using regular 18-inch leg bolts. Across the installation, I gave the mounting points, and then the insulation has been designed and engineered so that if someone were to climb on it, which we don't think that people will climb on it for how beautiful it turned out, that it can withstand all the loads of not only a person but of weather as well too. And then it's been spray painted, and then we're in the process of clear coating it right now with a oil-based high performance clear coat. And we will have a license agreement. We did shoot it through engineering, so it did get validated. And if Bob wants to say anything about the project, we're shooting for September. We're shooting for the month of September for a display date, for a 30-day display date. We would get an insurance policy and obviously a license agreement with the city.
Good morning, everybody. To follow up off of Dave, this is Bob here. So I am actually here with the sculpture itself. I don't know if everybody can see my screen. Dave, is my screen showing right now with the sculpture behind me? I lost sound on you.
Raise your phone up. Okay.
There we go. Okay. So is everybody able to see this right now or no? Shoot. Okay.
Yep. A little bit. You're blocking it somewhat.
Okay. I apologize. I'm losing my internet signal in the back of the shop where I'm at with the sculpture. But basically, this is the sculpture itself. So you can see the colors. As Dave mentioned, I started out many years ago as a graffiti artist in the city in the 1990s, and since then have been doing public art for the last 10, 15 years, taking the idea and energy of graffiti, but abstracting it. So you have all the energy, movement, and line work of graffiti without the lettering, without any specific wording. It's just pure shapes and pure design. So this is that sculpture. I'm really excited about this piece because, as Dave mentioned, at least in the city of Cleveland and possibly Ohio, this is a first for taking an abstracted graffiti piece and creating a three-dimensional public art installation. So it's something very unique to the city.
Thanks, Bob. Any comments or questions from the committee?
Can I make a comment?
Absolutely. Go
Before
ahead.
okay, thank you. I want to say I love this. I've seen plenty of Bob's 2D artwork, and to see it transformed into a sculpture, a three-dimensional piece of art is really transformative. I believe, Bob, this is your first sculpture, correct?
Yes, at this scale it is. I've attempted some small scale, like 1 to 2 foot sculptures before. This is my first large scale public art sculpture.
Okay, and I do want to say the city Department of Public Works did authorize this location for this work of art and gave direction on the location on the site. And I did want to also bring up to Bob and to Dave that this site also, I'm not sure of the timing, but I think we could work out some coordination, but there later on the agenda, it looks like there's a pilot park, a temporary pilot park amenities that's going to be programmed in this space as well. So if that could be coordinated to happen at the same time, that would be great, because you'd have the visibility not only of pedestrians and motorists, but also more engagement with the sculpture, with the amenities from the pilot park. So we can connect you guys with Marika Clark, who's working with that group. So I just wanted to say, whether it's a standalone or it's up during the same time, it would be a great compliment either way.
That sounds great. Thank you.
I guess the only thing I don't see here is I can just guess from, I get a pretty good idea of where it is on the property without a site plan, but you don't have any, looking down site plan view of the show where this is proposed to be located.
That should have been the next slide, I thought.
That is the last slide that I have.
Okay.
We can shoot, if you want to email, we can email you an overhead projection. It's something we can email out.
Okay. So where would you say that is roughly? Is it say?
It's about 400 feet. It's about 400 feet away from the bop stop. So if you're at Mariners Watch, it's slightly across the street from Mariners Watch.
Okay, good.
Can we go up a slide? Because I was pretty sure that we did have a site plan, unless this is the wrong version of the presentation. This might be the wrong version, because we did have a site plan. We added that in, so I think this is just the wrong version.
So that does what blocks it.
Yeah, I could email Nathan and Donna the updated presentation that does have the site plan on there.
Sure, that would work. We could send that to the committee.
I think this is a really dynamic sculpture. I'm really excited to see that installation come off, and I think it's a great place that will feature it, to see it from many angles. So I find this very, very exciting for the neighborhood. But you mentioned, Tara, the pilot park project, which I think we're also reviewing today, which it sounds like these are just two separate initiatives that happen to be coinciding. Is there any collaboration between the two in terms of citing the sculpture and what the dimension is?
There hadn't been up to this point. I just found out about the park programming, I believe yesterday. So up to this point, there hadn't been any collaboration. I've been working with the artists for this project for a few months now, but now that we're all aware, I think that there could be some coordination depending on the timing of the pilot park.
Yes, well, if we approve this, I'm certainly for myself going to view this as I want to review the park in terms of where this is going to go relative to everything they want to do there. So hopefully that can become more clear when we look at that presentation. But I like this. I think it's far enough away from the Bob Stop building that it'll has space to breathe around it, and I like everything about it.
So I have just a clarifying question. So this is a temporary installation, or this is permanent?
It's a temporary 30 days.
Got it. Okay. I agree. I think it's seeing Bob's video. It's a much more dynamic and interesting sort of piece than sort of what we're seeing on the screen right now. I think it'll be interesting to see kind of in place and how it does interact with the proposed park, temporary park as well. So I think as this process continues, I think it would be good if these things will coexist at the same time, how those two things work together.
Any other questions or comments from committee members?
No, so the installation will just run from 30 days from whenever it's installed, and that's the time frame.
That's correct.
Yeah,
That's correct.
Yes.
And Donna and Nate, I'm sending the correct presentation to you guys right now with the site map.
Okay.
Thanks, and we'll make sure to share that with the committee.
Well, if there are no other questions from committee members, I'm prepared to make a motion.
I think you should.
Then I will move to approve as presented.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, Nate, please call the roll.
All right, Doug Wall.
Aye.
Alex Frondorf.
Aye.
Chris Lozier.
Yep.
Antonia Marinucci
Yes.
and Margaret Land.
Yes.
Okay, the project is approved. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. We appreciate it.
Great.
Yeah,
we
just
look forward
work with
to
the
seeing
city to get your permits
Thanks.
and license agreements.
Thanks. Will do.
All right. Next is the temporary park. I believe Marika is supposed to present this, but I don't see her online right now. So we'll go to the next item and come back to this.
Hey, this is Jay Rashmuk from the city of Cleveland.
Oh, Jay.
I just jumped on. I could talk about this if Marika isn't available.
Fantastic. Go ahead.
Yeah, so basically Marika approached us a couple of weeks ago about this idea of activating Jim Mahon Green. So we just took a site visit out there and just talked about what she had in mind. And this is kind of like she has a grand idea for Jim Mahon Green in the long term, but this is kind of what we talked about for a quick activation just for the summer project. Basically adding some temporary fencing near the shoreway guardrail, not up against it, adding some planters nearby as well, just for some aesthetics against the fencing, then just adding a various mix of benches and picnic tables or tables and chairs or whatever we could get available, either from NOACA, we're working with them to get some free supplies, or she mentioned that Ohio City Inc. could be fundraising to purchase some things to put in the park. So this is kind of just a quick sketch of what we kind of talked about, mixture of seating. We just heard about the art sculpture, and we could definitely accommodate that kind of like right in the middle, so we could, wherever we put benches or picnic tables, we can certainly move them out of the way and make a nice, seating around the public art. So I don't see any kind of conflict whatsoever with that. Then in part of this project, we're looking to enhance a little bit of the bike lane. As you're aware, there's a median space between the travel lane and the bike lane. So we're looking to add some small vertical barriers, kind of like just like small plastic barriers you kind of see on bike lanes, and maybe adding some paint or some markings on that median area just to kind of highlight it. Because I guess, when I was out there, multiple people were driving on that median space. So just kind of creating a little more separation, highlighting the bike lane and the median space of pedestrian or for vehicles that don't actually go into that space to give a little more protection for the bike riders. So that's kind of like the main components of this project. And we're working with Public Works to get a license agreement to get it activated, working with NOACA through their street supplies program to hopefully get some of this stuff for free just for the summer, then return it when it's done. Or if you guys want to purchase your own, I mean, that's yours to keep. So we're kind of looking for various different sources to find the things to put in the park.
Well, looks like an updated sketch from what we saw in the packet that Nate sent out in advance. Am I wrong about that, Nate?
That is correct. They updated the presentation.
Okay, well, I like this better because the first one we got, I was a little concerned about because it seemed kind of crowded up against the Pop Stop building with like a row of benches or something in front of it. And so I like this, that it seems to use the general space of the park pretty nicely. I certainly have questions about, the elements like this, the fence and the planters and tables and benches and what all those are, but I think my initial response is I like it.
Is this for conceptual review or final? I would think conceptual, given the amount of details we have, correct?
I'm not going to sign off on it as a final unless we get more.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think the final design will be dependent on what NOACA has to supply us and or what Ohio City Inc. can purchase is what my interpretation was from Marika's. So they're working on options for fencing and maybe looking at some local partners to see what was available to put in the park. So it's definitely, yeah, there's some options that Marika was looking at. I'm not sure exactly what she had in mind for final design. Once we get the approval from Public Works and we get a list from NOACA what they can supply, then she'll be able to kind of pinpoint more of what she wants to purchase on her end.
Jay, I have just two primary comments. Some of them are the same as Doug mentioned. One, the fence, I'd prefer to go without a fence. The fence that's shown is pretty unsightly. And I don't think it adds a whole lot, and that it doesn't create an enclosure. You can just walk or run around it, or same with your dogs. And then the flower raised beds, good idea, but is there a plan for maintenance and upkeep? Those will dry out pretty quickly in the summer heat. Is there a plan for that?
So we haven't discussed that yet. We're kind of just still workshopping ideas. I mean, I'm totally open not having a fence. Marika was.
Hi guys, I'm here.
Hey, Marika. We're just talking about the fence and the plantings.
Yeah. On the plantings, I was imagining just planting some really hardy grasses, like a blue lime grass that is extremely drought resistant, and I think would work pretty well with minimal maintenance. The other thing I would mention is that since this is technically city-owned land, I do wonder if it might be possible to have the city like help water plants on, like a every once in a while type basis. But I was imagining, plants that require as little maintenance as possible. In terms of the fence, Alex, I feel like none of this is worth it without a fence, to be frank. Like the whole reason why I think people don't use this space is because it feels unsafe with the shoreway. So in my mind, not having a fence is kind of a non-starter. Like it doesn't make sense to put anything there, then I don't think anybody will use it. My goal is to get a fence all the way down. The only reason why that type of fence is what I'm showing is because we don't actually have a budget for this. This is just like of really kind of like grassroots temporary pilot in order to just see if people are willing to use this space, if there is, you know, basic safety measures in place from the freeway that's immediately adjacent to this site. So if there's any other ideas and ideas on funding, I'm totally open to them. I don't think that this fence is the most beautiful fence ever, but to me, the fence is critical and foundational to doing anything on this site.
Well, I don't know if you're, is that just like your observations that it's not being, the park's not being, space isn't being used because there's not a fence? Because, I mean, I've drive by there for 30 years and seen the property, and I do see it used occasionally. But I think, in my mind, the reason it's not being used is there's nothing to go there for. It's just a strip of grass. So my suggestion would be, let's try putting the tables and benches up there first, and see, and planters, and see how people react to that. I don't personally view the, and I've never really, you know, thought about it. It's not a dog park where you're going to let your dogs run. You want to keep them contained. And I am in complete agreement with Alex. You know, if it's this fence or no fence, I'd go with no fence.
I think my only comments would be, I think whatever the elements are that were being looked at, is that it feels intentional and not just sort of haphazardly sort of different materials and things that come together. I know Marika, you have a very good eye when it comes to composing things and making things feel intentional. But that's just one thing that you know that I'd like to suggest as part of this, that there's a cohesion and that there's a reason for the materials versus it just sort of being what's available or you know what can you know what's affordable. And I know that again this is sort of a pilot project to see kind of engage sort of interest in using this as a park. But I think as all this comes together, I think it'd be good to just think about it cohesively and making sure that you know what's being sort of installed is, you know, feels intentional and feels like it's the right materials and right, you know, fixtures for this area.
Before we take any other comments, the councilman has had his hand raised for a while now. So Councilman Kerry McCormick, go ahead.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Just wanted to support this temporary park too. And I'll just say one of the conversations that I've had with Marika and we're looking at right now is the installation of a permanent fence along the shoreway side that would be more aesthetically pleasing and permanent. So I just wanted to layer that in there, and we may be able to find funding for that. I will say, having lived directly across the street from the park for 5 years of my life, with the shoreway, I do think there's a safety concern with children and otherwise using the space without some sort of barrier. It's a 4-inch curb that separates speeding vehicles in the green space. So I do think that would be an enhancement, but we're looking at potentially ways to get a permanent fence along the entire stretch of the park. And if we can get, find a funding source for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kerry. Well, I still stand by my comment that, and I understand the thing about we now have more children in the neighborhood but until we have funding for a real fence, this just looks like an excuse me kind of construction fence. And I think that it just detracts from the appearance of the whole thing. And so if given a reason to go there, like have a place to sit, that little stretch on the north side of Detroit where it's all lawn, there isn't a place to sit down there. Maybe there is a bench, or there used to be, I don't know. But if all you can do is sit on the grass, I think we've got this bike lane going along there. Cyclists might want to, pause and take a break and run their bikes up and sit on a bench or something, or sit at a table. I might, and that wouldn't matter to me a bit whether there was a fence there or not. So I guess I feel rather strongly that I'd rather, if that's our choice of sort of like this temporary looking fence or no fence, I'd go with no fence, unless you're worried that, you want to provide a place that's a little more protected for kids, maybe some partially fenced off segment or something, but that's an awful long fence that I think doesn't contribute anything visually to the appeal of that space.
I have a question about the possibility of a permanent fence by the city. Is that something that would come before this committee for review? Or is that just the city, just has the authority just to put something up?
This is Jay again. I'm assuming we would have the authority, but I would definitely have to double check with our director if that would be a design review requirement or not.
Just from my perspective, being a resident of Ohio City, and on this design review board, I would appreciate the opportunity to see proposals for what a permanent fence might look like in this area.
Okay.
I'm not for or against it in one way or the other, but I think it would be. I would appreciate the opportunity to at least know what might be going in.
I think one thing that might be helpful is just if committee members have specific types of fences that you would want to see as a more permanent option, sending those over as suggestions, I think would be helpful just to know what kind of fence seems acceptable. Sorry. I think I have a fundamental disagreement about the need for a fence. Like, to me, dogs, children, like, just to make the space feel safe. To me, like, I've had a number of conversations with people that live in the immediate vicinity. I see this site every single day. I walk past it almost every day. I think safety is definitely a concern. I think people probably would sit there if there were benches, but I still think that there is a legitimate safety concern. And I don't think it's just perception. I think there's an actual safety hazard.
Well, again, since this is from my perspective, I'd like to see it tried without the fence and see what happens. Maybe we decide that based on how it's used, that hey, we need a fence, and something to think about coordinating with is on the north side of the shoreway. There's a much more substantial concrete barrier, but there's a fence on top of that. So maybe an iron or aluminum fence that's more decorative like that might help hide.
Right. Well, Doug, there's no fence separating for part of it, the bike route, the bike lane, the running route from the shoreway itself. Right. And I guess I'm trying to figure out, what is the fence supposed to be, like, psychological, like you feel at ease, or is it actually supposed to be functional? And is it supposed to be functional from keeping dogs from running into the street, or is it from keeping cars from coming under? Like, I'm trying to figure out, what is the purpose? What is the functionality that the fence is trying to serve?
To me, it's I think it's psychological, but I think it's also a physical barrier from young children or dogs running out onto the shoreway.
I mean, what if there were posts and ropes that run between the posts? You could have two of them. I don't know. I've given this all 30 seconds worth of thought, so I don't know.
I think okay, this is all something that we can discuss in the future. In the interest of time, I'd like to let Tara Petrus, who had her hand raised, go, and then since this is conceptual, we can wrap this up, I think, if nobody else has any other comments pressing.
Okay, I'll be quick. I just wanted to ask what the time frame is to do the pilot park. I believe the artist is still on the line, Dave Biro, who's working with Peck to do the temporary sculpture. They are looking to have their sculpture in that space throughout the month of September. But with the new design, I'm not sure if they would easily work well together from what I originally saw. So I just wanted to know what the time frame was for this particular installation.
Tara, I can speak a little bit to that. We're trying to get a license agreement with Ohio City Inc. Relatively soon. That way it could be in place and could be, implemented as soon as they would like to. So it's more dependent on getting the materials in hand and actually installing once we get that license agreement, which I don't believe will take too much time. So, I mean, I don't want to speak for Marika and Ohio City, but I would say hopefully sometime in July we could have the license agreement and get some things out there, at least some seating, maybe not all the elements you see, maybe it would be a phased approach, but
And then how long would it be there? I'm going to connect the artists with Marika just to provide some level of coordination for when the sculpture's up, whether it's up at the same time as this or at a later time, if this is gone already.
So this is definitely temporary. For a license agreement like this, it would have to be temporary, and based on discussion with Marika, it would just be during the summer. So that could be, from July until September, maybe up, a little bit later than that. Definitely within 2022 for sure, probably up to August, September, maybe October, depending on how people are feeling about it. But definitely temporary. I think it would be great to overlap with the public art if that's something that they're comfortable with.
Yeah.
But the timing is still unknown at this point. We could probably flesh out a little bit more once we get the license agreement in place. And we're just waiting from NOACA to hear on some liability issues from borrowing from them. Then we'll be able to process a license agreement.
Okay, we can talk offline about it. Thank you.
Yep.
I have
two quick comments. One, if the timing could coincide with the design could accommodate both the sculpture and the temporary park at the same time, I think it would just be great for activating and bringing people there to come see the art. The other thought, I understand Marika's position with kids and dogs and the safety concern, just from visiting it myself as well. Could we consider maybe consolidating the footprint and using the planters as a barrier, and just kind of, maybe that's a way to do it, or more planters in front of the fence if it just kind of needs to be like quick and dirty and cheap. So maybe use the planters because they look like they have a nice height to them. Maybe that could be an option to help kind of create, if we consolidate the footprint, it might help keep the cost in check, to act as a barrier and keep it looking, lively and a little bit more aesthetically pleasing.
So I have a couple of questions, I guess, for Jay, representing the city and parks and so forth. Is the city maintenance crew willing to mow around all these picnic tables and benches? Normally they would put, we'd take the grass away from where the tables are so they don't have to move the table to mow under them. Those guys like to get in and get out. Has that been discussed at all from the city's point of view?
I've reached out to maintenance. We have not talked in detail about that, but that's something we'll have to work out to make sure they're comfortable with this, and what we can do. Maybe worst case scenario, maybe periodically move some tables so they can mow one week, move the tables the next week. So something we'll definitely discuss with them once the license agreement's almost in place.
Okay, well, that's just something that concerned me a bit here, and also with the fence, you're creating this 10-foot strip on the side of the fence by the highway, and if we had a more permanent, substantial fence, maybe we'd want to put it right along the guardrail and not waste that 10 feet that nobody's ever going to use. And then lastly, about as far as using the park, there were never, like I said before, there's no benches or activity space or any reason to. I think if that sculpture's there are going to be people stopping, pedestrians and bikers stopping to check out the sculpture. And during the pandemic, the Bop Stop made an agreement with the city where when they weren't allowed to have indoor concerts, they put tables out there when the weather permitted in the summer, and nobody had any problem sitting out there. I sat out there several times, and they would serve drinks from their patio, and you have about 15 tables out there, and concerts were really well attended, and then people would sit on the grass out there even beyond, which I see this as another opportunity to coordinate with Gabe at the Bop Stop, even, if there are going to be more permanent tables out there. it would be helpful to get some input from him. Maybe he'd like the opportunity to put a band out on the patio and play for people sitting in this park. And the last question is, does anyone know who Jim Mahon is? I don't know what Jim Mahon, I didn't even know this little grassy strip had a name.
I'm not sure the history of Jim Mahon, but Marika told me she was aware that he was a resident in the neighborhood and had some significance, but I'm not sure the full details. But it was a person in the neighborhood.
He lived on Clinton Avenue between 33rd and 38th and took care of the park, among many other things.
He was known as the mayor of Ohio City. He has a lifelong history in the neighborhood, and his widow has lived in the neighborhood for 80 plus years. So there's a long story there.
Okay.
Good to know. So if there are no further comments or questions, if this is conceptual, then we don't need to take a vote on it. So
No, we don't need to make a motion or anything. I think we've all made useful comments that can be considered as this moves forward.
yes, fantastic. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
So next we have the Hingetown Rainbow Crosswalks. I believe Ben Trimble from the Ohio City Incorporated office is here to present these.
Hey, Nate, can I kick us off on this one?
Absolutely, Councilman, go ahead.
All right, I'm gonna jump inside real quick. All right. So appreciate you all hearing this today. Let me start by saying that about 5 years ago, we passed legislation to allow for decorative street painting in the city of Cleveland. Many cities across the country have done these types of treatments, be it for rainbow crosswalks or otherwise. But unfortunately, outside of the legislation, we did not see a lot of progress of doing these previously. Really excited that the new administration has embraced the idea of decorative street painting, and we've already seen some really exciting progress in Asiatown and some other places. So about 5 years ago, a group of residents and other folks came together about having rainbow crosswalks at this location. This is a really important location for the LGBTQ+ community. One of your board members, Mr. Frondorf, was integral in getting the marker at this location. It's the Ohio Historic Society's first marker for the LGBTQ+ community in the state of Ohio. Thank you, Alex. Was a critical part of that. There's a long history of the community here, everything from the old center to bars, restaurants, community spaces, spaces that served the HIV positive community, as well as different Pride events over the years. I believe this was the location of the first Black Pride, Alex. Maybe I'm wrong on that.
Possibly, I don't know definitively.
Okay, I'll fact check myself on that. But anyways, there's a long history for the community here at this location. So there's been conversations for years about having rainbow crosswalks at this location because of its long history from the city of Cleveland's perspective. We got a push because Stonewall National is hosting their tournament in Cleveland, or their conference, which we're really excited to welcome them to Cleveland in July. So we thought, let's use that as the impetus to push for these really exciting installations. So we talked to Director Wong, and as well as other community members about getting this done. She indicated that they're still working on the process for decorative street painting in the city of Cleveland, but that she for sure wanted the proposal to go to the design review, which I think makes all the sense in the world. And as they iron out a more formal written process for these types of installations in the city of Cleveland. So anyways, I know Ben, I think, is going to go through the slides, but really want to thank everyone in advance for considering this proposal. It's really important for the history and for the future of our community that we honor the history, but that we also ensure that we are, maintaining symbols in our community, that we are open, welcoming, and affirming to everyone, regardless of who they are, who they love. And I think these are really exciting installations for this section. And I look forward to the presentation. So thank you all so much for hearing this today.
Thank you all. Thank you, Councilman. Great intro. I'll try to keep this brief. This is not a project of Ohio City Incorporated, just to make sure that's clear. This was a proposal that was brought forth by the councilman's office as well as neighboring building owners, folks, residents, and this has actually been talked about for years here. But neither Fred Bidwell nor Graham VC, who actually paid for the application for this, were available to present today. So I'm just trying to help out. The location we're talking about is the intersection at the south side of Detroit on West 29th Street, as you can see from the site plan provided, as well as 3 crosswalks that border Church Avenue and West 29th Street just south. Those are the east, north, and south and west crosswalks in that intersection. Very simply, you can see the precedent image related or that's directly above. The crosswalks will be painted with thin lines of rainbow colors. Just to let everyone know, there is no formal process here as the councilman talked about, but there is very much a time sensitivity to this installation because it has to be installed by the second weekend of July, as that's when Jukebox is actually holding a pop-up block club party as part of the Stonewall events. That is a national event. It'll bring national attention to Cleveland. So we think that's great. And I hope that we would be seeing a lot more proposals similar to this. Painted crosswalks have been shown to, reduce traffic speeds, et cetera. So I think that hopefully we'll see lots more of these community-driven installations on streets and intersections throughout the neighborhood.
Thanks, Ben. And thank you, Councilman, for that great introduction. We have Tara Petros from the city's public art coordinator at City of Cleveland. Tara, go ahead.
Thank you, Nate. I'm in agreement with the councilman regarding inclusivity in the city. I do wish this was able to be put up during Pride Month, but just the fact that it's being put up at all, I think is a wonderful statement about the welcoming nature of our city. A couple of things I did want to point out or ask questions about if this is meant to be permanent, and what type of paint they're using, if there's going to be a maintenance plan in place, and then just point out from the ordinance that there shouldn't be any type of texture relief unless it's anti-skid. I don't think that the other restrictions from the ordinance apply to this project, but I do like it, and I'm glad to see that we have an administration from the top down that's in support of something like this. Because in the past, the culture was, well, it's against federal regulations, but I just want to point out that there are Rainbow Pride crosswalks in DC and DuPont Circle. So that's the federal seat of government, and they have them there. So I see no reason why we couldn't do something like that here. And I understand that if this is approved today, that the license is anticipated to get to them sometime next week. But I am interested in the lifespan and maintenance plan materials. Thank you.
So if I could jump in quickly, and Tara, thank you. You are a thread through administrations that has always been supportive of these things. We appreciate you. Just a couple of quick comments. One, we've cleared this with the Chief Operating Officer, Bonnie Tewin, who all of the folks that would need to sign off on this report to. So as Tara mentioned, from the top through the system, they're supportive of these. The other thing I would say, in Graham, these been working with the artist, but it is one, are meant to be permanent, and then two, they're using, and I apologize on the terminology here, but the type of paint that you use on roads that is really resistant. Again, my apologies on the language here. We can get that over for sure, but it's the
I think we lost you.
Well, while we're waiting for him to come back, he just said, it's meant to be permanent, right? Did I get that correct?
I'm sorry, can you all hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
My apologies. So yeah, I just noted that we've cleared this with the Chief Operating Officer of the City of Cleveland, who, again, all the folks that will need to sign off on, report to, and she also clarified, as Tara noted, the federal guidelines do not govern these side streets. So that is not an issue. And then forgive me on the terminology here, but so yes, supposed to be permanent. The paint is the type, and again, Graham Veazey is going to work with the artist on this, but it's the type of paint that is used on roads that is supposed to be really durable. And I'm losing the term for that type of paint, but we can get that to the committee.
Oh, Councilman, I think it was road marking paint that they're going to be working with. So it's like,
Okay.
it's specifically, yeah, I mean, it's called road marking paint, I guess.
Yeah, traffic paint is another term.
Yeah.
Okay, just make sure you have your permits secure. But like I said, if it's approved today, you should have them sometime next week.
Yeah, that's great. And again, Director Wong noted that they're working on building out a little bit more formal guidelines on these, but instead, said we want to make sure this gets in front of design review, which again, I think makes all the sense in the world. So
I guess one other sort of detailed question is in the sort of reference photograph at the top, all the new art striping is between the white stripes designating the crosswalk. I assume that's the program here. You're gonna just work within the area between whatever the white crosswalk stripes are currently.
Yeah, that definitely would be required to stay within the normal crosswalk white lines.
yes, and that is my understanding as well.
All right, well, I think this is a great project, I think it's gonna add something to the neighborhood and bring us a little bit of notoriety here and there. Would anyone, if there are no further questions or comments, does anyone like to make a motion?
I would like.
I'll make, oh, go ahead.
Do you have a comment? Go ahead.
I was just going to make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Okay, call the roll, please.
Call the roll, yep. Doug Wall. Alex Frondorf.
Yes.
Margaret Land.
Yes.
And Chris Lozier.
Yes.
And Antonia Marinucci.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, the project is approved. Fantastic.
Thank you all so much.
Good luck.
Thank you all.
All right, moving along. We have 4750 Lorain. This has been seen before. This is for final approval, and Tyler Brummett is here to present. Go ahead, Tyler.
Hey, what's up, everybody? So I do want to recap on our last meeting on some of the questions that I wanted to get answered before we kind of go through this. Margaret, one of your questions were, is the brick solid or was it a cover brick? I did confirm the brick is solid brick throughout the entire building. So there is no veneer brick that is put over that. I did also take in consideration the cosmetic question of adding the third window or the bay window on the West 48th side. Took the architect in there and the contractor, and we were able to include that. So now if you go down to page 11, we were able to add that in there. So it does look a lot better. You can see that it's a lot more, it just flows a lot better. And then we did provide the window cut sheets. And then as far as the turret, as we were kind of up in the air on that, if we were to need to replace it, we did do a full inspection on it. Believe it or not, it's actually in very good shape. So we're going to do normal maintenance, clean it, put the right, sealant on top of it. The top of the turret piece is a little crooked. So we're going to re-secure that. And then we are going to basically refinish it to its black color that it once was. So if we can go back to, if we just want to start on page 3. So this is a site contacts plan. Tells you where everything's at. I actually go to page 3. Yeah, this kind of just gives you an idea of where the property is at. It's across from Metro Health, the Urban Community School area right there. So it just kind of gives you the corner that we would be, bringing back to life. And then if you want to go to page 4, this is an actual street view. Shows the two buildings that are connected to it. It's directly across the Metro, and then the building is actually on the corner. And then this is the condition of the property right now. So this building has been vacant for quite some time. It's really had zero attention. So we're excited to really change this corner, especially with the Metro going right there. You have a bunch of townhomes that are getting put on the block to the east of it. So we do believe that the businesses that will be going in this corner unit, potentially a coffee shop we're thinking about starting there, will be a great, for the community. And then if you can go to page 6, these are just, I hired Cleveland Draw as our architect for this property. So we have the site elevation plans. We have the full window dimensions, which we'll get to later in the slide. We have all the window cut sheets, but this gives you an idea on the elevations, what windows and exterior items that we are going to be focused on. So if you go to the next page, it's kind of just gets rid of the red lining. It basically just gives you details on what we're doing with the brick, what we're, how we're going to be, tuck pointing where it needs done. We're going to be changing the wood board on the turret, which I have all the dimensions for that later in the slide. And this page, so right now, these bottom 3 windows are block windows, and the window to the right of the door is actually boarded up. So we are going to make these functional windows. So everything is, matching. We are going with the CAD window. So they are going to be historic approved windows, metal windows. We're not going to go with vinyl. That was one of the questions, is there's current vinyl windows in there now. Probably was installed there sometime with no permits, and whoever owned it before just slapped them in there. But we are going to go with black metal windows to kind of keep the same theme throughout the entire street in Ohio City. And if we want to jump to page 10, go one up more. All right, so this is the final of what we're looking at here. So again, just to recap, I was working with SRP on this project. We ended up, we took the original renderings and I provided that to the architect, and he just gave it more detail and kind of made it more context instead of conceptual. So later in the slide, there is exact, on this slide, actually, it does have the windows dimensions for every single window has been measured. Every single cut sheet has been prepped. So all these dimensions are accurate, and we are keeping the existing areas, right? So we're not adding any additional windows. We're not cutting anything into the structural. Right now, the bottom windows are just all wood boarded up. So we're removing that. We're installing storefront windows on the Lorain side. Do we have any questions so far just on the concept that we have here?
Yes, the area above the storefront windows and entries is this shaded gray. What is that material? Is that an existing brick that's going to be exposed, or is that a wooden sign freeze?
Are you on the turret?
No, on the face of the building there along the Lorain Avenue.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so what's on there now is, I think it's just rotted plywood that once had a sign, and it's falling down. So what we're going to be doing is removing that, putting hardy board, and then the paint that we're painting it with was preservation paint that was approved through the historic preservation color palette that we're putting on there, which you'll see later in the slide on which colors were selected. But it's just a hardy board that we're going to put there. It doesn't wrap around to this side of the property. It just never was like that. So we're giving it more detail. On the hardy board is going to be a little bit better trim, because it's right now it's just plywood that was cut and nailed in there at some point. So yeah, now you can see on the bottom here, on the bottom windows, those are actually going to be functioning windows. We're going to add this window, this little window to the right of the door. So the idea of my office is going to go in the Lorain side. I do real estate, and I always wanted to be within I live in Tremont, so this is very close to Tremont. So I'm going to actually be physically operating out of the smaller office on the Lorain side, and then the corner unit, like I mentioned, would be a great coffee shop. So my fiance and I are actually thinking about, we were going to maybe lease it out to somebody who was going to start a coffee shop, but we're actually thinking about starting our own coffee shop, which would be like kind of like a store coffee shop idea. And then this little window to the right of the door would be a great grab and go. So you like book your coffee, you go up to the window, you can take your orders kind of like how Starbucks does, but without having to physically come into the store. So it's just an idea, just so you kind of know the plans of the project over there. But yeah, so it's going to be a functioning building now, where these windows are going to be, the back part of this building would be like the dining area where people can go and, you know, do their meetings, work from there, drink a coffee, while the front area would be like the coffee shop in a store.
It looks like on those first floor windows on that west elevation that the windows are not full height of the original opening. There's a little gray block between the top of the window and the stone lintel. Is that like a wood infill panel?
Yeah, so it's gonna match the design basically throughout with the same gray. Here's why the architect and I thought that was a great idea. So just back to the coffee shop theme, it would be really cool to, like, on these little signs, to maybe have like a coffee bean or a coffee mug or some kind of cool, design on top of that. Because the windows that were there at one point, there might have been something above it, but they're just block windows. So somebody just took basement windows and went all the way up. Maybe they were broken, but there are supports within the windows that did show that there was something there at one time prior to the block windows that were put in there.
So is the same thing true at that side entryway where the transom doesn't go all the way up to the stone lintel? Is that currently blacked out as well, or was blacked out?
Where the door's at?
Yes, the door and the side lights.
Here, so yeah, you can see on the door, it's all wood right now. So there's a door there, and on the left and right side of the door, it's all wood. And then above it, it's just wood too. So it's all wood with no windows. So you can see it's all block. And then you can see this one has.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see where you're going with that.
Yeah, so we're kind of, if you see the one to the right of the door, there's like that little trim piece on top. That most likely was on every single one of these back windows at one point, but somebody has put block windows in there.
I'm thinking that those were probably transoms. That would have been unusual to have a wood panel infill like that above a window to the top of the lintel. Either it was all window. If not a double hung window, it might have been a transom window above there. But I guess we don't have any historic photo evidence one way or the other, so that provides us some latitude. The last thing I want to ask you about are the entrance doors.
Yep.
Are those aluminum entrance doors, like storefront entrance doors that you're proposing?
Yep. They're going to be commercial grade, black metal doors for both the fronts on Lorain, the two doors on Lorain, and the door on West 48th.
Yeah, I think that's kind of historically incorrect. Those should be certainly the two doors to the stairway up and the right front should be like 3/4 light wood doors, as with the west elevation entrance there. The aluminum storefront door is kind of not historically correct with what would have been there, and that's likely true of the main entrance on the corner of the building.
So the two doors that I'm referring to is the corner unit. That's going to be a metal door. And then to the right over, if you go to the right, the farthest right door with the smaller bay window, that's going to be a metal door. And then this door that's to the left, that would be the door that goes upstairs to the apartments. So this door is not functioning within either of the storefronts. We the feedback that I received in the last meeting is cohesiveness of all the doors. So that's why we did budget to have metal doors. But if we would want, if to get approved to have wood doors, I have no problem with putting wood doors on the 48th side or the door off of Lorain going up to the apartments.
Well, I think you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 exterior entry doors, and my opinion, they should all be 3/4 light wood doors to look traditional. The aluminum storefronts are just completely not what would have been there originally.
Okay, yeah, that's not that wouldn't be an issue for us to make the adjustment. It would actually save us money on the budget as well. A lot, about probably 10 grand or so. All right, so let's go down to.
I want to pick up on one of Doug's comments from earlier, who's one of my own, that on the other side of the building, where you have the lintels and then you have this gray infill. I can't imagine that historically there would have been something other than a window there. It would have made no sense to put a lintel and then put wood. My strong preference would be that the windows fill that entire space, that glass fill the entire space.
So it's putting in like a transom window.
A transom, or probably a taller window.
Okay, it's a really big space. It's a large area.
Yeah.
So for it to be a normal window, the window would actually not be really functioning because it'd be so heavy. So I think having a transom open area on top, we can add that in there. Cosmetically, either or is going to look good. But whatever this space is above these windows, it could either be solid gray or we can put a window in there. In the layout plans.
I think having glass there in one way or the other is much preferable.
Okay, that's not a big deal. We can add that. Because on the concept design, they didn't really have anything in those areas. We do have the transom windows above the bay windows on the Lorain side and above the doors. Yeah, if you scroll down, you can see we do have the transom windows on all of those. So we can continue that on the other side as well.
Okay, thank you.
And then yes, we just have on page 13, the color, palette from this historic preservation. So we are going off of those colors to keep it within the historic palette that we were told that we needed to use. And then we have all the window cut sheets on 15, 16, 17, the door cut sheets, all the details of all that stuff. Talks about the type of windows. Oh, and then the board right now on the turret, it's rotted wood. So we measured all of the wood and the trim, and it's 4-inch. So we are going to be replacing it with the same existing sizes that are there now with 4-inch hardy board. So it will still look exactly the same, but it'll just look a little bit more cleaner and fresh, and it will be painted. So we did, and that's actually a real example that the contractor put together that he had in his truck of the actual board that we'd be using.
One thing about that, those are usually come one side wood grain and one side smooth. We would want you to use the smooth side out, not the wood grain.
Okay, I agree.
Go
ahead.
It's my understanding that those Anderson 400 series are clad with vinyl on the exterior. Do you have an option?
Clad with wood, so it's metal with wood.
Okay, because when I look at that on the Anderson site, it was advertising that it was low maintenance because it was clad with vinyl. So I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, if you look at the window cut sheets, it does explain that there's metal. You can get it with vinyl, but we are going to be getting it with wood.
What you mean aluminum? It's an all wood window, no cladding?
No, so the clad's on the outside, but then there's the wood. It's not infilled with the vinyl.
Right,
No,
but the exterior
what she means is
cladding.
the exterior is the wood clad with aluminum or vinyl on the exterior, or is it painted?
Metal with metal.
Metal, okay, so it's aluminum clad.
Yeah.
All right, good. We prefer that.
And let's see here. And then there was questions on the exterior brick cleaning. So because of it being a historic building, so we are going to be, before we do the staining and power washing, we will be power washing the building. And I have the safety data sheet for the masonry cleaner. I did send it to Nate. It was a 9-page packet that basically just talked about the environmental EPA friendly chemicals that we're using. So I just wanted to clarify that we are going to be using the correct chemicals, and that once on site we start cleaning, we will have the paperwork, posted, and all the cleaning material to be reviewed if there was ever a question on that.
The other part of that is the pressure. You don't want to use too high a pressure wash to knock out any of the mortar or damage the brick. So
Right.
look at the Secretary of Interior standards. I forget offhand what it is.
It's 400 or less, 400 PSI or less.
Yeah, so the guys that are going to be doing this work, they're lead certified. They do all of that type of stuff. Asbestos, that's actually their one of their main businesses. So they're the perfect guys to be doing this because they've done many historic buildings, churches, and all that stuff before. So they're going to be one that's going to be handling the cleaning. And then as far as the colors of the exterior, I was actually able to find the exact color of the building next to me. So it will flow all the way through. So it's not a bright red, like fire engine red. It's more of a dull red, which looks, once you put it on, it gives the building a historic feel. So the plant store next door that Mike owns, the owner of the other building, I was able to match that from Sherwin-Williams, which is exterior paint. There's the code and everything there that we would be using. And that's going to be throughout the entire building on Lorain and 48th and behind the property as well. And then the last page was just the updates that I went over in the beginning. And I just want to note that this corner is extremely important because it's been vacant for so long. But this is my first step within this little corner. I also bought the building behind the dealership. It was a vacant house I don't know if it was really vacant or not, but it was a very run down, ugly house that I bought that I'm renovating. And I'm also right now working on getting that dealership on the other corner that doesn't kind of go well with the community. And we'd be potentially looking at putting more store frontage there, or townhomes just like Nez did on the block on 47th. So this is my first step into this corner block, but my goal is to, bring this entire corner, both east and west, back up because there's so much great development going on in that area.
Thanks, Tyler. That was a very thorough presentation. Questions or comments from the committee?
That covered my issues. Anyone else? If not,
I just have a couple quick ones. One is Margaret is correct. The 400 series of Anderson are vinyl clad. So I would just recommend, I guess, make our motion contingent on a different series. I think you probably need the E series for the wood clad aluminum. And I would recommend also like updating your presentation for landmarks to reflect that.
Okay.
And then I think I just missed it. The color schemes you presented, is your top choice the Westchester gray and the Chelsea gray combo? Is that what you're intending? Was that what you want, or are you still looking for input there?
No, so the color scheme that I'm going with is, so it's the Chelsea gray and the Westchester gray.
Okay, that's fine. Lastly, and this is because you have the privilege of being across the street from my kids' school, is to ensure that any sidewalk blockage that is going to be required for construction to make sure that you are maintaining safe pedestrian access on that corner. So we've been dealing with a lot of safety issues with the kids
I'm actually involved in that as well, because they just decided to put a nice merging lane in front of our entire building, which has created a nightmare of cars trying to race. They took the street light from 48th to 47th, and there was a kid that was hit because of that.
Yes.
So
Correct.
I'm actually, so there's no parking in front of my building right now. There was not approved by the city or like through Landmark or OCI or, you know, the committee or anybody, and it was just put on there. So I am working with, you know, Tom to get that fixed. And I actually told them that I would be willing to extend the curb on that corner of some kind of hardscape and pay for it for the city, because I know the budgets are tough, and actually put like a trash can there. And so there's not a lane to merge. It's just a parking lane, because that is a parking lane. So
But you're already connected with Tom Dell and
Yep.
Okay, that's great.
And this
And then I'm
was there
sure
as well.
yeah, I think that there's that was a reaction obviously to the child that got hit, and I'm not sure what, I mean, I can't answer to the longevity of that installation, but of course we'd all love to see a permanent traffic calming solution. And I hope as a business owner and building owner there, you also want safe pedestrian crossing to access your building.
Absolutely.
So okay, cool.
And,
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Great. So obviously we can't make that a recommendation, but thank you, Antonio. That's a good comment. Anybody else, or do we want to make a motion? And Antonio, actually, for my clarification, what, if it's going to be part of a motion, what series would you recommend?
I'm recommending E series because I know that's just because I know that that's the one that's aluminum clad versus the 400 series. There might be others that they offer, so it doesn't need to be, that's the recommendation. It's just the requirement would be aluminum clad wood. Is everyone else in agreement with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and then I can make a motion if, I guess my last question is, we are, for that West 48th side, are we requiring a transom window or a full height double hung to those storm windows?
I think the full height double hung would be best, but I would be okay with a transom, but I'll ask
I
what others
think
think.
from an affordability standpoint for Tyler, I think a 1 unit double hung is going to be more cost effective than a 2 unit, like a double hung with a transom. So if the
Doug, you're on
preference-
mute.
Doug, you're muted. You're still muted, Doug. Do you?
Okay, I think that's a pretty tall opening to get a single double hung. That might not be a standard available dimension. But if it is, yes, I think one window would probably look better.
But could we frame it? Could we state it as a full glazing in that?
Yeah, well,
in that
one
opening.
double hung, you could phrase that as, that would be our preference, but you know, if that's not practical for some reason, then we would accept the transom. That would be my suggestion.
Okay, so if I phrase it as motion to approve as presented with the contingencies to ensure a aluminum clad wood window, wood 3/4 light entry doors throughout both facades, and a full glazing at the West 48th Street windows, full double hung preferred, but a transom would also be acceptable.
Second, anyone?
I will second that.
Nate, please call the roll.
Yes, Doug Wall.
Right.
Antonio Marinucci,
Yes.
Alex Frondor,
Yes.
Margaret Land,
Yes.
and Chris Lozier. Is Chris still here?
Sorry, I was double muted. Yes.
Great. And then I see Marika. Marika, are you here?
Yeah, sorry, I just joined. Yep.
Okay, great. So it's approved with those conditions. And Tyler, I'll get those to you, the exact conditions later. Thanks, Tyler.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Tyler.
Okay, so the marathon continues. But last but not least, 3401 Clinton Avenue, home restoration. Keith, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, go ahead.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, it's a little bit choppy. If you turn off your camera, it might help. We cannot hear you now, though, so I don't know if you're talking. I think he got kicked out of the meeting, so we'll just wait for him to join. Oh, no, there he is, but I don't know if he's... Keith, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Okay, all right. Thanks, guys. Sorry about that.
Okay, go ahead, Keith.
All right. Let me get back to the slides so I can see what we're presenting here. I'm not seeing the slides come up right. There we go. Okay. All right, so I'll try to just breeze through this because I know it's been a long meeting, but my name is Keith Hayes and I'm working on behalf of Jose Aviles, who purchased the home at 3401 Clinton. Alex knows it dearly. It's across the street from him. There's a site map here to give everyone an idea. This is an older Italianate. Go to the next slide. Okay, we just wanted to be sure and clear that the previous architect's drawings were not approved. They're not sensitive to the historic nature of the home. And so this slide is just being very clear about that. Next slide. So here is on the left, the existing conditions of the home. This was about a month ago. There were these large masonry piers. Those were demoed, and the temporary entry is just treated wood that was required for insurance purposes. That's temporary only. You go to the next slide. So I just got a few bullet points here of the exterior items to address. I'll just tell you generally, like the scope of the work I'm doing is basically just to provide the the facelift so that we get back to the original clad Italianate, as well as to provide a sensitive entry to the home. I'm not doing anything in the interior or anything like that. We can go to the next slide. So on the left is obviously the photograph of the home, and then to the right is the initial sort of mock-up of what that historically may have looked like, looking at some other Italianates for reference. You can keep going down. There's a lot of Italianates on Clinton. There's a number of really beautiful ones. This is just showing one that's kind of kitty corner actually on Clinton. Keep going. As I said, there's a lot of Italianates. You don't have to look too far. Beautiful restorations in the neighborhood. This particular house, while not masonry, did have an original Dutch lap profile, and we're hoping to restore it to that. This slide is really kind of showing what does the entry situation look like outside of trying to strip all the bad layers off and return it to what it was originally. We're also interested in, what does that entry look like? We can go to the next slide. So I chatted briefly with Tim Barrett, who most people on this phone call will be familiar with. Tim did a stoop design. I would refer to this as a portico. Tim likes to call it a stoop, which is, I think, pretty humble. We can go to the next slide. So on the left here, you have an example of an older Italianate, and then on the right, you have, you know, this addition of the portico, this sort of minimal design intervention that's looking at maybe a more contemporary and maybe not so ornate version that's still sensitive to proportions. Go to the next slide. This talks about, you know, some of the features that this home still retains. You know, underneath some of the vinyl siding, there was original, as I mentioned, Dutch lap siding. There's fiber cement material underneath that, and then sometime someone decided to put vinyl on it, maybe prior to landmarks being established. We can go to the next slide. This is, you know, just a close-up image of that kind of hodgepodge of layering over time. We probably cannot go back to the original wood given the condition that a lot of that is in, which would have been our first choice. If we can go to the next slide. This is a close-up view of some of the rotting and decay of the original wood. Next slide. And if you recall from that sort of collage of siding 2 slides ago, the middle layer, which I said was fiber cement, was tested and unfortunately does contain asbestos. So we were left with the decision to, you know, to see if we could remove that and get back to the original material. But the few sample areas we were able to look at the original wood, it was in such disrepair. And given the not only the cost to remediate, but some of the environmental suggestions, we're looking at using a new siding that would go over, so the vinyl would be removed, but then we would disturb the asbestos as little as possible and clad over that. So here is the kind of a corner situation where we pull back some of the siding to see, you know, that really poor condition, but also to dimension the profile of the original Dutch lap. You can go to the next slide. So these were the elevations that were presented. They're very minor changes to the Franklin Clinton Block Club a couple Thursdays ago, and showing the sort of primary elevation that faces Clinton. And then we're also showing the eastern elevation, which is the one that you get a lot better view of given the walk on the side of the home. To be clear, what the owner is proposing and what has been recommended by the Block Club as well as Alex is to address all the elevations that are visible from the street. So it would be 3 primary elevations, and that sort of bay bump out would be wrapped. So if you imagine the whole house as a simplified cube, we would essentially do the 3 facades that would face Clinton, so to address that visibility concern. Century of Color was a book that was introduced to me by Tim Barrett. He said it's a great place to start. And so I got a copy of that book and provided it to the owner and his wife, Jose and Claudine, who looked at that color palette and were inspired to put together like 4 or 5 options. We've narrowed that down to 2. The one that they liked of the 2 and that we got good feedback on is this current palette. Typically these would have like a 3-color mix, and you would apply you know, trim, detail work, and siding. And so these are the 3 colors. That the last one is called I think it's called an urban bronze. It appears very black. That's not the hope that we're going to paint this house black. So here is that color applied to the elevation as drawn. We can go to the next slide. So the real question, and I'm interested in those of you who have experience in this kind of works input on the actual siding material. We've had some reason to consider natural wood siding as it's what's original to the home. We've had some interest in also looking at a composite material because of its longevity. And some of that is, you know, in comparison to sort of what we'll call the rapidly renewable wood that we can get that's typically used in exterior situations versus the fiber cement manufactured cementitious products. So I sort of have put the two options together, this being the first one looking at wood siding. The product that we're looking at is a cypress that's pre-stained. This is available to be milled in any profile. So the advantage of this one in particular is that we can get that same face profile of 4 inches. It would be a 5-inch board, allowing for the overlap of each piece of siding. And it would be, you know, true to the original, you know, natural wood that was originally there. Again, this would be applied over the asbestos. We can go to the next slide. This is just a little bit of literature directly from the manufacturer's website. Everyone will have a copy of this if they'd like to read a little bit more. The only thing I want to note is that we were looking at the number 2 grade, which is, it's not the highest premium, so it would be a little bit of a knottier material. It still is cypress. It still has really rich grain in it. And I think the same version does allow a lot of that to be legible. And we're not, you know, of course, looking at a implied grain or anything like that. This is as natural as it gets. So here are 3 colors that we kind of pre-selected that seem to work with some of the owner's interests. And then if we go to the next slide, you can see a handful of other images of this same material. The sample that they provided is a 5-inch that can be milled to 4-inch to match the profile exactly. And then you see in this far slide to the right, the color that they were preferring, which is, it almost has like a bluish hue to it. It's very dark. The lowest of the 3 on the left, in person, it looks very brown. I know Zoom is so convenient for everybody and probably the safest way to do this, but there's nothing like seeing the real thing. I have it here behind me, but I don't know that it would be any clearer than what's here in the slide in the natural light. So if we go to the next slide, more literature on, you know, what might be some of the benefits of cypress. I've done some research and looked at cypress versus cedar. And again, I'm open to input on any experience any of the people on this call have had. And if we go to the next option, the next slide, some corner details and things like that, pretty basic stuff. We can go to the next one. So here is one that is a little bit more conservative in its approach and obviously adds quite a bit more hue to the proposed exterior renovation. If we go to the next slide, you can see that applied to the elevation. This one does a little bit more ornate work in terms of the corbels and some of the other details. We go to the next slide. You know, this was sort of you know, the natural versus composite conversation. So we're recommended to look at a, you know, cementitious material. Hardie no longer makes this colonial smooth product for use in temperate climates such as the Midwest. Go to the next slide. The product that is available is formerly known as Biro. It's now marketed as True Exterior. They still make a Dutch lap profile. They're one of a few that do this, and it's a polyash-based material. Then the next slide. This is just showing that you know, unpainted, unprimed actual material on the side of the house, kind of comparing it with what exists. Again, this is a product that, you know, we would have some variation. The profile would match, the shadow lines would be similar, but this would be a 5-inch profile instead of a 4-inch profile. You can go to the next slide. Yeah, just some details on how this would be applied. You know, the sheathing obviously is for new construction. We would have a layer similar beyond the sheathing, which would be a building wrap, kind of containing the asbestos, so that we don't have to have our contractors wearing full hazmat suits. And then we would more than likely use 1/2-inch burring strips to create some evenness in space before applying either the cypress or the true exterior. We go to the next slide. Again, similar outside inside details. There's a kind of image of what I was suggesting, you know, the section might look like as it's being installed. This is the true exterior. Go to the next slide. These are the elevations that were, as I mentioned, minorly tweaked after some comments from a neighbor named Pat. He is an architect and had mentioned some thoughts about the relationship of the front door to the foundation. We looked at some typical images, and a lot of times the foundation is similar in its elevation plane to the door. In this case, that is not true. The ledger board that supports the first floor sits directly on the foundation. So you can see that the lowest portion of siding would be some kind of wood trim that would be sensitive to not starting the siding below the level of the door. But I don't know if we can zoom in at all. It would essentially be about like a 10-inch piece of material that would match either the cypress or the true exterior material, not in color, but in actual material. And so that kind of lends me to the next point, which is, you know, window trims and the construction material that would become what the portico is. And thank you for advancing that last slide. Would try to work with the same material. Of course, we would not be, if we chose true exterior, building this portico out of what was formerly known as the Biro product, but it would be sort of painted in a flat wood so that it appeared to be the same. So with that wraps up my presentation. I was hoping to leave some time to get input from those and a recommendation of what you might choose, whether that be the cypress or the true exterior, based on some of the comments and pros and cons of each.
Thank you.
Thank you
for your thorough presentation and providing all the details on the portico. We often just get a drawing of that without the specificity of your dimension. I guess regarding the portico, I think the one thing I would suggest is the columns look a little skinny. I'd beef them up, you know, a little bit bigger. They just don't look quite substantial enough for the character of this house. I think some of your example photographs show much beefier columns, so you don't have to get that much, but you know, maybe a couple inches bigger. Those look like the skinny part looks like maybe you got 6 inches dimension there, so that's I would beef that up to 8, you know, and I think it would look more appropriate to the home. As far as the siding material.
Hey Doug, can I hop in real quick on that comment?
Sure.
On the portico, also in addition to those dimensions that Doug mentioned, the length or the depth of it appears larger than what I think would be historically accurate. I went and I measured the other, or 2 of them that you referenced, one here at the corner of 32nd and Clinton, and the depth of that was 4.5 feet. And the pink lady down at the corner of 29th and Clinton is 3 feet in depth, and you're showing about I think 8 feet, if I'm reading that right, 8 feet in depth here.
Yeah,
it might need to be way more shallow.
7 too, but yeah. Okay.
Yes, I
very much agree. That was my comment. It's disproportionately deep, needs to be brought in.
Okay.
Thank you all.
I guess regarding the siding material and color, I think that I like the idea of using the natural cypress, instead of the composite material. But what I'm afraid of is the staining is not going to look, back when these houses were built, they didn't stain them, they were painted. And so the translucent nature of the stain is I'm fearful it's going to look wrong instead of the opaqueness of a paint, which makes me think the composite material is a better choice.
There are opaque stains. Is it an option to have it done with an opaque stain?
Yeah, they basically have like 42 colors or something, and they send it, that sample, but you can kind of choose whether you want it to be unstained or a different stain. And so maybe what we'll do if cypress is the way we want to go is contact them and ask for a 4-inch profile with the more opaque stain, or maybe a couple pieces with varying levels of stain to see, does it make sense to do. I think what would be a little bit uncontextual, we don't see too many stain homes in the neighborhood, but may actually be a really nice result. I did read the specs on their website for what is considered pre-stained, and they recommend that it be either recoated with a polyurethane or restained within like 24 months. So maybe that's just, they do the first layer, you nail it up, patch all your holes, and then you do another stain within 24 months for a longer lasting product.
No, she's right. I think that was not an opaque stain that they had on there. So you would definitely want an opaque stain.
I think for like the maintenance and care, whether it's this homeowner or whomever has it in the future, doing it out of the wood is a nice option, because then you're not dealing with multiple materials that might need paint or restained, repainted, different maintenance and care. You have something that's more consistent, and so that makes an approach to that a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Keith, I have a question. Are you, or clarification, are you like the designer or the contractor for the project?
I'm not the contractor. I worked in historical preservation. This question came up last time. How do I know Jose? Jose just retired from the fire department, and a good friend of mine also worked for the fire department. And so he said he works in historic preservation. He might be able to help you through the steps necessary, because a big hurdle for this project, and many of you know this from the previous proposal, was they just kind of put this, this deck patio thing that might look good on a above ground pool on the front of this Italianate. And so that was sort of how I got brought into the project. And so doing my best to just be sensitive to other precedents in the neighborhood, and help him get through really the facade, the facelift of the home, without being too much more involved.
Thank you. Thank you for, I just wanted to make sure that just wanted to know like what side of it you were coming from. For me, I'm not like I don't know that I'm a fan of the stained approach. I just feel like it's not something, and I guess Margaret, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, that's not a typical application. And I also question if it's going to require so much maintenance that it's not going to protect the wood material. Like, I mean, paint protects the wood.
Like I've seen opaque stains that look exactly like paint, that you don't know that it's a stain. It reads like paint. And those have if they're applied correctly, you get a 20-year lifetime.
Okay.
But it has to be the right you know what I mean? It has to be the right product to convey the look, because you're absolutely right. With the Italianate, that would have not been stained. It would have been painted.
Yeah, it would have. And I'm not a strict preservationist, but I do feel like that's, I think opaque would have to be an option that I would be on board with. And the other thought that I have, Keith, and I'm renovating a house down the block, also on Clinton, also in Italianate. So we've gone through like a million different decisions in you know, scenarios over there. And there's two things that I'm concerned with. And I'm an architect because of youth preference. Sorry, my baby's talking. My baby wants to participate. When we layer material on top of each other, I understand obviously encapsulating the asbestos, we are in control of the wall cavity. So I don't know what they're doing on the interior side in terms of insulation decisions, in terms of how they're finishing out. But my first preference always is to take it down to the sheathing, because when you're installing windows, when you're choosing your insulation method, when you're wrapping the house or creating the air and moisture barriers, we want to be able to control what's happening in that wall cavity, and you can't do that. I'm very much understand the asbestos concern, but I highly encourage you guys to take it down properly. Secondary to that is that when you hit that existing cornice, you have a fantastic cornice detail on that house. When you're layering up that depth, how are you mitigating that change? Because you have a cornice that is on the existing sheathing, and then you're building out what might be like an inch or two of material beyond that base. And that really, from a restoration standpoint, is going to kind of compromise that detailing. So for those two reasons, if you go down Clinton towards 45th, you'll see mine's the Tyvek one. We took off all the siding for that reason, to get down to the sheathing, to protect the cornice, and then we chose hardy board, but we're going to resheathe the whole thing or re-side the whole thing. And those were the two main factors for our decision: to be able to control the wall, the whole shell, and to be able to mitigate the original cornice detail that was so important to us to preserve.
Yeah, thank you, Nia, for mentioning that cornice sort of transition, because I think that is going to be key to the overall look and feel of the house. And I would agree, being an architect as well, to basically second everything that Nia had mentioned. Taking it back down to the original sheeting will, one, allow you a better end result from a energy standpoint, and from a getting everything in alignment on the exterior facade as well. One question that I have regarding the siding is, so when you investigated to where the Dutch lap is the Dutch lap on all of the facades, including the front facade, or is it only on the sides and the rear?
It's on the entire house.
Okay, gotcha. Because sometimes you'll notice certain Italianates will have a different main facade treatment, and then the sides and rear are different. So understanding that the Dutch lap was historically around the entire house, that's good to understand. When it comes to the material, just again, thinking about maintenance and durability and longevity, I think one of the reasons why, and again, this is just my opinion, but one of the reasons why a lot of people are putting sort of the hardy material is because that it is a less of a maintenance hassle down the road than if you were to do wood siding or painted wood siding. So that said, I don't have a preference one way or the other, but I do agree that an opaque stain or a paint on the wood would be recommended. Yeah. So yeah, I think those were sort of my main comments, and then the only other thing related to the sort of the build out would be the window detailing. If you were to fur out from the existing, how all of that comes together. But my recommendation follows Nia's, where we would take that all the way back to the sheathing versus trying to fur out and build on top. So those are my only comments.
I was going to bring up the window trim as well. Thank you. I also wondered, the investigation that was done down to the original siding, was that done on multiple sides of the property or just in one area?
There's two sides that were already exposed where the rear porch was taken down. And then we pulled off like a lower corner just to the right of the entry. So to be able to look at, the bottom condition just above the foundation. What we hope to do was to remove all of the vinyl and get a better assessment of what that condition of the asbestos is like before we made a final decision on whether to remove everything or to, essentially see if there was a detail that we could come up with some sort of trim at the top that would make up that, 1 to 2 inch difference by going over and using furring versus, as you had all suggested, just going all the way back to the original, sheathing. I'm not sure there's even sheathing on this house. I think it's directly to the Dutch lap directly on the interior studs. So I agree some more investigative work could help inform that decision moving forward. And I appreciate the commentary about the depth of the portico itself. I know there was some interest because they were not going to do a porch, across the whole thing, which I think is better from an Italian and historical perspective anyways, but to just have a little bit of room to set out, place to sit, maybe a couple potted plants and things like that. So, and I should mention also that Jose's intent with this, when he purchased a house, the inside was already done as a 2-family. So this would be for the short-term 2-family rental property. And he's an empty nester, lives in Strongsville. His kids are off to school. He grew up in Solo and was interested in, potentially down the road if he could acquire the back lot. Some of you may know this lot was consolidated and split to where he could, access the property from the rear alley and have a garage and stuff like that, that he might ultimately return it to a single family. So I think at this point, it would just be, frank, to be honest, to be frank, to just say that, what he's interested in doing is getting it back into a rentable condition, as it's been an eyesore for a long time. So I don't think, I warned him as he was, with his option to purchase this house, that it would be a significant investment to meet the historic criteria of owning an Italianate. But I'm also trying to be sensitive to, his budget, and that, he's not a developer. He's not going to be an occupant, but he ultimately wants to, conform and do the right thing. And obviously, that will only benefit him in resale value and rental value as well. And that neighborhood has no problem commanding higher rents. So I think what I'll plan on doing is taking a little bit more note of dimensions on porticos. And Alex, I appreciate you doing some of that legwork for me. And then seeing if we can get the contractor to pull off the vinyl siding, again, as it is asbestos. And there's probably some exposure. We kind of want to have a plan and then move forward. Ultimately, another concern, if we're going to get this done this year, is lead times with either material. They're about 8 to 10 weeks out, and I don't want to get anyone in a position where materials aren't able to to be had, so that this project drags in, into 2023 before we get this looking close to what it originally was. I have one question for Nia. With the choice of hardy on your Italianate, was that, I know there's a longevity concern there. What about profile? Did you not have a Dutch lap on yours? What led to the decision to go with hardy on your exterior?
We did have a Dutch lap on the front, but it had been modified enough that we weren't confident that it was perhaps original. I think maybe it would have had time in group originally. The other 3 sides, the rest of the house had 4-inch exposure, just a lap siding.
Gotcha.
So we chose to do all of it in a 4-inch lap. And the hardy material is just one that I've worked with a lot of times on my own properties and with clients, and I just really like the product. That was the choice there. And we're not doing, and I don't usually recommend a pre-finished one. I do a brine ready for paint and then paint it
Okay.
after installation. So that we
Okay.
can control the touch up and all of that stuff more thoroughly.
Yeah, and I'm aware, and it's been mentioned even during this meeting, not to do anything with the grain, but a flat composite material is preferred. So
Yeah, the smooth, yes.
yeah, so you know, I'm not going to try to say, well, you did it on 45th and Clinton, so we're going to do it here. Nor am I trying to add another potential material because Jose is really interested in, you know, getting this project re-sided, and I would imagine most of the neighbors are as well. But understanding, you know, from a cost and budget standpoint, if he's you know, wanting to, or when we take off the siding, you know, to you know, remove all the asbestos and stuff, and maybe the Hardy offers some cost savings to the Biro, or I should say true exterior, and or the Cypress, which are premium siding products. Maybe that it is a possibility. I think you know, being in historic preservation, try to follow the rule as much as possible, which is if you can match the original profile and shadow lines, that we would try to do that. So I appreciate all of your commentary and feedback on this presentation.
Keith, and we appreciate your trying to do the right thing. We have many applicants that come before us and are the exact opposite of what you're trying to do. So we all appreciate it. I have just 2 or 3 quick additional questions. On the stoop, the materiality, what were you thinking for that?
You know, limestone is not going to be cheap, but I think I've got to do a little bit more, you know, research and say, can we find that?
But a natural stone is what you're going for.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. And certainly foreshortening some of that will make it more affordable. But what I've seen in previous conditions is that, you know, the thickness of the tread is essentially that natural stone, and then you sometimes have a you know, other product or material, cement based, below that, so that the front of the steps and the top of the steps are all natural stone.
And again, if pour a concrete base and you clad it with natural stone is another option.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So,
and then the on the east side, I noticed there was not, that elevation was not provided, and that towards the rear of the property there was a falling down sort of wooden addition structure that's been taken off, and a new one has been built with what I guess from the street looks like treated lumber, perhaps.
Yes, correct.
Is that a temp? Is that like the front steps? Is that temporary or is that permanent?
That is permanent. He was to get insurance, he needed to provide new steps for both units, and so that was news to me. I actually was walking the dog along your street today and was turned around and said, "Whoa, it's done already." So I know that there is some visibility of that from the street, and I did take a few images that I can include with the final presentation. Do you think that is acceptable, given it's on the back half of the house?
I probably have to take a closer look at it. At the bare minimum, if it is, it would need to be painted and not left to be just treated, exposed treated lumber. Sure, at the bare minimum, but I need to take a closer look at it.
Okay.
And then, yeah, I think those are, in another house, Nina's house on Clinton, on the north side between 38th and 45th, that too is being taken down to the sheathing and being put back. Granted, I'm not aware of any asbestos issue there, but to make sure that the depth of the window, how it meets the cornice, that those historic details are maintained. It is being taken down and not just hardy or whatever the material is being placed on top of a furring out. Yeah. So I think that anytime you fur out on a historic structure, like Chris and Nina and everyone else has said, it brings a lot of unfortunate consequences.
Yeah, I was positive that the pro to doing that was a little bit more window depth. That it's always we don't see as many homes being built with the same depth that most have before. So that would require certainly additional detailing and sensitivity at that cornice line, as well as the windows. So I think with that feedback, I'll include a wall section, which I think would be really helpful in the next step. And then most of that can be informed by what we find when we remove the vinyl siding.
I would just add about taking the siding down to the framing or sheathing is that a lot of houses of this period, if they had sheathing at all, it was often on the interior, not on the exterior. So, you know, carefully try to poke around and see what you've got. Hopefully, if it was on the interior, the previous people that did the renovation on the inside didn't take it off.
I wouldn't be sure of that.
Yes, so try to, you know, keep that in mind as you, you know, poke into it further.
All right, I do have one more question slash comment. So the original front facade, the trim around the upper part of the windows is sort of arched versus the rendering that has sort of the flat top. Was that intentional, or in your investigations did you find that the brown sort of trim material isn't indicative of what was there originally?
That's a great question. I'm relying on precedent to, propose what I think might have been there prior to the investigative work to remove all of that, vinyl and aluminum. I think the pitch of those arches looks contrived, both on the first and second floor. So I think when we remove that vinyl siding, we'll be able to see was there a wood arch, and then what was the profile of that. But that does bring up a point. I am taking some, I suppose you would say, liberties to propose that the top windows be square, whereas the first floor windows, which you do see some historic precedents for in many Italians, have a much slighter pitch. Any other questions?
Yes, no further questions or comments. Someone would like to make a motion, perhaps?
Was this just conceptual at this point?
My hope was to be able to put some additional detail after talking with Nate into the next presentation to Landmark. If you would like me to represent to this committee once the siding is removed with the wall section, I would be happy to do that.
Yeah, I think we don't have enough to pass it at this point. So yeah, yes.
All right, let's do that. We'll just wait till the next presentation to make the vote.
So Keith, with your approval, I'll make a motion to table it.
Okay, so we will present. I don't know that we will have all the siding done in the next 2 weeks, but we will present based on what we find, and hope that this discussion will inform that decision, and also be sensitive to some of the budget concerns if we do get exorbitant quotes required to remediate the asbestos. We'll look for your approval on the details required to be sensitive to the historic, we'll call it the facelift, which is really, maybe that's not the right word, the application of furring and siding over the asbestos in the case that is either an issue environmentally or economically to remove.
Great. All right, do we have a second to Alex's motion to table?
I'll second.
Nate, please call the roll.
All right, Doug Wall,
Yes.
Alex Frondor,
Yes.
Margaret Land,
Yes.
and Chris Lozier.
Yes, sorry.
All right, so the motion is to table, and that passes. And Thank you, Keith. We'll be in touch, I'm sure.
Mhm.
With that, Doug, do you want to end the meeting?
Yes, we will, that concludes our agenda for today, so this meeting is concluded.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Yep.